Journalism in Myanmar has become much freer since the military junta stepped down 3 years ago. But the tough limits that still apply are also becoming increasingly clear. Leading newspapers recently published blank front pages in protest at the jailing of Zaw Pei, a journalist for the Democratic Voice of Burma website, after he was found guilty of disturbing a civil servant while researching a story about educational scholarships in central Myanmar. The arrest is part of a broader official pressure on human rights that is causing increasing concern as the country moves towards what are supposed to be its first free and fair elections in more than half a century.
The extraordinary changes in Myanmar over the past few years include the official end of military rule, the release of political prisoners, and the relaxation of draconian censorship laws. But human rights and freedom of expression still remain curbed in significant ways and could come under further pressure as tensions rise ahead of elections due next year.
T. Saw, the chief editor of Myanmar Freedom Daily newspaper, runs his small media empire from cramped offices in downtown Yangon. He's a 35-year veteran of Myanmar journalism who saw many of the bad times, including losing his job after he and some colleagues briefly took over state newspapers during a 1988 pro-democracy uprising that was brutally crushed by the authorities.
So we got more freedom. For example, before censorship, we couldn't write anything about corruptions. No way. And we couldn't write anything about ethnic issues like the ethnic armed groups, their voices, what's going on in Kachin State, Karen, etc. Now we can write those stories. But there is still this kind of censorship because you may lose your license. Any paper, the daily, the monthly, the weekly, the license control is still there. And then there are some sort of legal actions against some papers.
Activists tell a similar story about what has happened since the end of the junta that had ruled Myanmar oppressively for half a century. Many political prisoners have been released under an amnesty program, but some fresh arrests have been made, and other activists say they are still not left alone by the authorities. Kun Bidu was freed under the amnesty program after serving 4 years of a near 40-year jail sentence handed down in 2008 for his political campaigning. He says he still sees his former jailers in the street and often receives phone calls checking up on his activities.
We still have a lot of pressure under this, and at the same time and there are a lot of human rights abuse still going on. Of course, land confiscation and no freedom, of course, no freedom of movement, things like that. So we have a lot of problems with the government.
The blank newspaper front pages are a reminder that Myanmar still has a way to go before the era of political repression can truly be said to be over. T. Saw is clearly relishing flexing his journalistic muscles, but he is also clear-eyed about what could happen in the politically turbulent 18 months or so leading up to the elections.
Any moment, any time, the general or the ruling general or the ruling ex-general may stop and say, okay, enough is enough, stop it, or let's turn back. That could happen. I think it still could happen. But how far will we need to go to reach this kind of the point of no return? I think at least we need a few more years, because we need to change the laws and the institutions, and if they're sound and if they're established, then we could feel sure that, okay, we have passed the point of no return. But we haven't reached there yet.